Series opened up with two Mets wins, but after that, it was two Diamondback wins, and obviously had to end with a bit of a heartbreaker as we welcome you to the Queen's Connection, episode number 17, if I did my math correctly, a production of Patton Sports Creative. I am your host, Andrew Patton, joined by the co-host, Corne Hogeveen. Corne, hello. What's a vibe? What to get the vibe check from you after this series split with the Arizona Diamondbacks?
Hey, let's have it positive. I was pretty negative last time out, but we split the series, four-game series against the defending National League champions, the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think in another, you know, part of the season, you would take that obviously after going up to nil with definitely a good chance to win that last one. But again, the Mets blew it in the ninth. So still, we saw some positives, uh, not only from our major league players, but a couple of minor league guys who played really well. And maybe we can talk a little bit about possible trade destinations, because that's what it seems the way it is going. We have heard some rumors that the Mets are open to trading a couple of guys, so I definitely think that's a part of the near future for us. So um, curious where the Mets and David Stearns are getting maybe some new major league or minor league pieces from.
Yeah, there was the tweet you sent me yesterday. That's something we could perhaps dive into in this episode. But first, let's jump into this Diamondback series because obviously at the beginning of this series, Thursday night, pretty much I think what we titled the last episode "Rock Bottom" because it was just a really rough series against the Dodgers. Just a lot of weird stuff that was going on there, on the field and off the field. So the Mets were just trying to look to turn the page and welcome the defending National League champions into a four-game series at Citi Field. And on Thursday night, we talked about before the game to just enjoy this pitching matchup because it was primed to be a good one. Zach Allen against Christian Scott. Unfortunately, for the Diamondbacks, Zach Allen only threw six pitches in this game. So it became a bullpen game for them against the New York Mets. So obviously that's also kind of screwing with the Mets a little bit because you're planning for to face Zach Allen for so long, and six pitches in, you got to kind of change the plan a bit. So it took a little bit for the offense to get going. I mean, we've said that before this season, but another case of the Mets offense. It took a little bit to get going. The Diamondbacks did jump out to a 2-0 lead in the third inning on a Ketel Marte double, but the Mets got a run back thanks to Francisco Lindor. This is the Francisco Lindor game with his solo home run to get the Mets back within one. He would later in the seventh tie the game on a single. And then in the eighth inning, JD Martinez broke the tie with a home run to give the Mets the 3-2 lead. Reed Garrett would shut the door in the ninth. So the Mets won the opener of this series 3-2. And obviously, there's two big takeaways in my mind from this game. One was being Christian Scott, who went just five innings, but four hits, two runs, which were earned, one walk, four strikeouts. And then, of course, Francisco Lindor going 4 for 4 with the two RBIs, with the home run as well. And we've talked about on previous episodes, the at bats have been good for Lindor, just hasn't gotten the results. This was finally a game where he had good at bats and got the results.
Yeah, he's hitting the ball hard. I think he has a pretty good May. If I saw the recent numbers put out there, that I think he was third in F-WAR in May. So April was just very bad, and for being not not out there for a month, it's tough to get those overall numbers back to par. And we've seen it with Lindor in earlier occasions that eventually you will see with a couple of good months that the numbers are getting back to normal. Seems like it's happening this year too. Hitting the ball hard. Um, I think he has consistently hit the ball hard this month, but hit in a lot of outs. So not overly concerned about Francisco Lindor. Like I said last podcast, I think we over um, we expect too much out of Francisco Lindor, um, and I still think that's the case. If he ends up with an around 800, 810, 790 OPS in how the league hitting wise, how the offense is hitting wise, I think you'll be very pleased, and I think you will definitely see that. But good to see that hard hits are not finding gloves for Francisco Lindor and for Christian Scott. I think it was what I like about Jose Butto in his starts, and I'm gonna mention Jose Butto. He had a bad start in the minors, by the way, so that was something I also should mention. But is the ability uh, to not get crushed, and we've seen a couple of times that Christian Scott um, maybe hasn't been at his best and still keeping the opposition, limiting the damage. And it's great to see out of young guys that they are able to do it. So I thought it was a big positive outing for Christian Scott, who was after the game was sent down, but for a good reason. That's probably something we will get into as well. All of the roster shake-up moves from last week, but uh, positive outing for Scott and positive for Peter Alonso as well for Peter Alonso, by the way, because he came off the bench after his fingers got maybe crushed. But for Lindor, obviously, also very good.
Yeah, I think another positive to take away from this was because obviously Christian Scott just went to 5 innings, so you need to get a little help from your bullpen. And Adrian Hauser threw 2 scoreless innings, he had 2 strikeouts, and Danny Young in the inning of work had 2 strikeouts. Danny Young, probably someone we'll talk a little bit about when we get towards the end of this series, but yeah, so we can transition to Friday because you kind of teased it there with the roster moves. The Mets did make a couple of handful of moves, well, we should say. Obviously, Christian Scott was the headliner because he was optioned to AAA along with Brett Beatty. Jose Iglesias came up. They DFA'd Omar Narvaez. They acquired Luis Torrens from the New York Yankees. So some roster shakeups from David Stearns there. Uh, so let's just get your thoughts on what they did Friday afternoon with their roster construction, and were there moves you liked, moves you didn't like, and obviously you wrote an article that's on our Facebook page, so you can we can tease people to go check that out, where you explain kind of the rationale behind the moves. But for those who are maybe illiterate and can't read, why don't you give them the verbal explanation?
Yeah, first of all, start with Oman Narvaez. Well, we mentioned in earlier podcasts, it's time to move on from Oman Narvaez, and the Mets did. Um, so yeah, I think that one was the most unsurprisingly, maybe surprisingly, that they got a guy. Obviously, in this case with the minor league opt-outs, we aren't necessarily aware of all the minor league opt-outs for other teams. So Torrens had an opt-out, so the Yankees could get something out of dealing Torrens. Torrens, guy who not only catches but also plays some infield. So that's some more flexibility. So that's good. Beatty, I think at some point you have to get a backup middle infielder, as we said uh, last week as well. So they picked Vientos right now. Give Beatty some time maybe to get some offense going. I saw that Beatty had like 33 AAA games, while Vientos had a lot more. So maybe it's time for Brett Beatty, who clearly improved on defense. It's time to get some offense going for him. So that's an understandable move, although I still think that Brett Beatty is the better overall third baseman for the Mets for the future than Mark Vientos. It's the right time to switch them up. And Scott, I think Scott was for most people the most surprising, but I think with the London series and the off days, it's a perfect time for the Mets to maybe go with 5-man rotation and have Scott, um, get a little bit of a rest because his innings. I think he had like 87 and two-thirds innings as his career high in pro ball, so that's not a lot. So it's clear that the Mets are gonna need Christian Scott to uh, have some time off. He's not gonna throw you 150, probably not. Anyways, probably hopefully 125, 130 is what you get out of Christian Scott this year. So um, that's smart. The only thing I wasn't 100% behind is uh, getting Iglesias up because we said last week that we wanted guys which who have a future with the Mets, a possible future with the Mets, and Iglesias is not that guy.
No, Iglesias obviously a veteran, made it back to the big leagues this year. Didn't play in the big leagues at all last year. Um, so that's the direction the Mets went in. Going into Friday, and Iglesias did get to start Friday night at second base. As we can dive into that game, it was Luis Severino going up against Jordan Montgomery. So some former teammates on the Yankees battling at City Field, and obviously both guys have a history of pitching well. Obviously, Severino's pitching well this year. Montgomery kind of still feeling things out after signing late. But you hope for a good pitching matchup. And, uh, well, both guys weren't necessarily on their games that night as the Diamondbacks jumped out to a 3-0 lead in the first inning, but the Mets responded with four. So that kind of set the tone for how the night was going to go. Starling Marte cleared the bases with a double to tie the game for the Mets. Um, and then in the next inning, Lindor drove in a run. So Lindor's hot bat continued from Thursday into Friday. The Mets put up a three-spot in the fourth inning as Tomas Nido got involved. Marte with another hit. So the Mets bats were going in this game. Go to the ninth inning. The Mets are up 10-5 on the Diamondbacks. And this is kind of a situation we've seen of late with the Mets. They have a little bit of a hard time closing games out. The two home runs allowed by Reed Garrett. Reed Foley started the inning, but got some traffic on there. So they brought Garrett in to try to be the fireman, put out the fire. Unfortunately, he was that fireman that was pouring gasoline on the fire for the time being. So he did get the two outs he needed to end the game, but a 10-5 game became 10-9 very quickly. So the Mets did hang on to win 10-9. Like I said, not the best night for Luis Severino, but um, did enough to uh, shut the Diamondbacks down kind of after that first inning. Eventually, later, as the pitch count got up, they started to get to him a little bit. But Severino, uh, five in the third, six hits, five runs, only four were earned, with one walk, four strikeouts. Um, Anything you took away from this outing from Luis Severino? Anything that you kind of saw and was like, yeah, this is. You could tell he was off early with pitches or anything like that.
I saw some grounders finding some holes early. The hit by pitch didn't help, so that first inning, I think it's always tough for pitchers when um, things don't really go your way in the first inning. It's tough to settle in. So clearly we saw that. We had that catcher's interference, which the booth made a good point about how can you have catcher's interference on a check swing. I thought it was an extremely interesting point because to me that is odd. So that didn't help him. Got some hard hits that went for outs. He got some soft hits that went for hits. Um, Overall, he was just off. He was behind. Um, Not the best savvy outing we have seen. But again, like I mentioned before, with many other match starters, um, able to settle in after that 3-1 first and with the Mets offense uh, clearly good enough to win and to help the Mets to win. It's good to see him go over 5 innings, especially after Scott not going deep. After the first inning, I always think that's pretty good out of your starter.
Yeah, something we should mention too, because obviously Severino went the five in the third, so there were still two more outs to get in that sixth inning. And Dednell Nunez came in and struck out both batters. So Nunez, another young arm we've seen have some stints and look really good. He's just doing that again. So perhaps we'll talk about him and Danny Young when it's all when we're wrapping up this series because some of the big guys in the bullpen been struggling, so maybe there's some opportunities there for the young guys. But that's a discussion we'll save for later in this episode. Something to note on the offensive side, the Mets did go 6 for 14 with runners in scoring position, so that was very good to see. Obviously, a good day for Marte we talked about, and a good day for Lindor. Also, nice to see Alonso was in the lineup. I figured you kind of thought that was going to happen after he pinched hit the day before and ripped the double. But just a really good all around offensive day for the New York Mets. So a 10-9 win on Friday night. So the Mets took the first two games of this series. We'll go to Saturday, which was the Darryl Strawberry number retirement. So that was obviously good to see Darryl get his recognition. Obviously, a great story for talk about rock bottom. He was at rock bottom at one point and picked himself up, got back on track, and has made amends with family and other people as well. So just great to see Darryl get this honor before the game. Unfortunately, for the game itself, not a whole lot going on to uh, talk to talk positively about. Unfortunately, the Mets lost this game 10-5. There was a grand slam in the third inning with Sean Manaea on the mound against Christian Walker. Christian Walker, very underrated player. We should mention that. So it's not like it was just some quadruple A guy getting called up that got Sean Manaea. It's a very good ball player that got Sean Manaea. Um, so the Mets put themselves in the hole early, weren't really able to climb out of it. Although you got to give them credit, going into the ninth inning, they were down 10-1, um, and they scored four to make it 10-5. We saw Jose Iglesias beat out a ball in the infield to keep the inning alive. So do have to give credit where credit is due for that. Also in this game, the one run that the Mets scored before the ninth was the Mark Vientos moonshot. So in our last episode, I gave you the Mark Vientos over under a half home run. So you made some money on that, perhaps. So I have to give you credit for that. While I thought Sean Manaea was going to have a good game. I mean, he had 10 strikeouts in 5 2/3 innings, but just that grand slam was a real killer. That definitely bumped up the earned runs and the runs allowed. So the Mets do lose a Saturday 10-5. Mention Manaea's outing. Very kind of weird, I would say, just because he allowed 6 runs, but he had 10 strikeouts and 5 2/3 innings. So, what's your takeaway from this outing from Sean Manaea?
I thought actually it looked pretty good. The first two innings, especially, I think he looked really, really good. True hard, true strikes. And then he had that second and third no out jam, and he got 2 outs after that. I think both were strikeouts, if I remember correctly. So then the walk to Grichuk was probably, the. I think you said in the chat, and you were right. You rather go after Grichuk in that spot than go after Christian Walker. So, as you mentioned, is a good player. So, I mean, with one swing of the bat, you allow 4 runs, but overall, before that, I think even with second and third no out, he really pitched well. So um, it is those kind of starts that small mistakes um, got him big time. A grand slam. He was so close of getting out of that inning and pitched so well after the first two came on. Unfortunately, that pitch to Walker, I can't remember what type of pitch it was, but I wrote down bad game. The There was definitely solid innings and good innings for Sean Manaea, but the bat came in bunches. So he wasn't able to limit the damage, as I mentioned with Scott, and I mentioned with Severino. He wasn't able to, which at times just happens. Like you said, Christian Walker is a good player. So yeah, it's not a guy that that you think, oh well, he got me. It's a good ball player that got him, and it made to me his overall he looked pretty solid, but it made his line not great. So not a good pick for you this week after two good picks. I should say, but it's not as bad as for. I mean, let me say it this way: I'm not concerned, and I don't have any concern for Shamanaya for his next outing, probably in London.
Sometimes the final line doesn't dictate how a guy actually performed. Uh, so that's something to consider as well. I think another thing to talk about from this game is Mark Vientos. Obviously, he hit the mammoth home run, his fourth of the season. And Brett Beatty was optioned the day before, so this is really Vientos' position for the time being. David Stearns did say that Beatty's going to be back at some point. I think we might have a pretty good idea of when he might be coming back up. Uh, but something we've talked about with Vientos, he's been a bit of a polarizing figure between the two of us. Obviously, um, you're not, or I think we agree on the fact that Vientos is not a third baseman. Like, from a fielding standpoint, if Mark Vientos's big league future is the DH position, obviously that's currently filled right now with JD Martinez, but just in what 6 7 weeks, that could be completely different. Um, but
Hundred
Vientos,
percent.
the bat, it plays at the big league level. Um, it's just a matter of, in my mind, I mean, he's off to a hot start. You're going to imagine he's going to hit some wall at some point, like we saw with Brett Beatty. Maybe not as bad, um, but Mark Vientos, is this someone that come next off season? Maybe it's a little too hard to tell at the moment, but is this someone you could feel potentially comfortable just marking in as your DH for 2025?
For me, it's one big thing with Mark Vientos, and that's strikeouts. Right now, he's limiting his strikeouts, which is a great thing. We always knew that he had the ability to hit the ball hard, and he has the ability to, hit the ball out of the park uh, on most parts of the ballpark. He goes the other way well. So if he's able to limit his strikeouts, I think yes. But yeah, to me, we've seen in AAA that he adjusted to that. He gotten better every year. So to me, there is some optimism in Mark Vientos. On the other end, like you said, he is a DH. So to become a good DH, you have to be better than league average hitting. You have to have a around 850, 870 OPS to be a good DH. If you also look at the uh, other teams where it should be SDH, because we have seen with the Mets, it's not always a very positive part of our lineup. But I think a good DH definitely be around those numbers. And if he's able to limit his strikeouts, I am a little bit more optimistic about his future chances. With Beatty, for example, you see and the defense has been better. I think Mark Vientos could still play some first and could still play some third. So not necessarily be the strictly DH guy next year, but that depends on what you prefer in the field because, as we mentioned, he's just not a good third baseman. I don't necessarily think he's a great first baseman too. So he's just not a great fielder. Um, so yeah, if you want him as your DH, he has to show he's able to limit the strikeouts and keep his hard hit rate up, and then I will give it to.
Well, on the Sunday, as we carry over to Sunday, did strike out a couple of times in that game, uh, so there you go.
Yeah, that's
But
fine. I mean, it's
but it
not like a
happens. It
DH
happens.
can strike out. JD Martinez is a good DH, and he strikes out too.
Yep. Yep.
But overall, the numbers in the major leagues we have seen so far from Mark Vientos, like right now, we're talking about how let's say 2 weeks worth of at bats around that for Mark Vientos. So it's a very, very small sample size because his OPS is crazy good right now. If he is able to keep it around, maybe even 825 because he's still young and you might see him improve. You give him that DH spot, um, but it's still a DH. And in my honest opinion, a GH should be a way above average hitter because that's the only thing you do.
Currently, Mark Vientos has a 984 OPS, but just 17 games, 56 at bats. The sample size is small, like we have mentioned. So get some more playing time, get some more at bats, see if he can stay consistent, and then maybe there's something to that argument. But we go into Sunday. Well, the Mets trying to take 3 of 4 from the Arizona Diamondbacks. They were going to ask Jose Quintana to hopefully give him a good start, and well, it did not start very well with the leadoff home run by Ketel Marte. Luis Gurriel hit a home run too, so the Diamondbacks quickly in the 2-0 lead. As we've seen of late with Quintana, the home runs have been an issue. The following inning, the Diamondbacks would tack on, add run, so they're up 3-0. Going to the third inning, the Mets with a 2-out rally. Alonso gets the first run of the game, and then back-to-back triples from Nimmo and JD Martinez puts the Mets up 4-3. It would stay that way going into the ninth inning, where Jake Diekman was brought on to try to close it out in a, a bullpen-esque game for the Mets, as Quintana only gave him 4 innings. And uh, we heard Mendoza talk about it in the post game. Sometimes when you're asking your bullpen to get 5 innings, not everyone to have everyone be perfect is you got to be lucky. And unfortunately, the one guy who struggled in this game out of the bullpen was Jake Diekman. A two-run homer from Ketel Marte. Diamondbacks took a 5-4 lead. Seawald, while the Mets did make him work a little bit, uh, had a 1-2-3 inning. So the Mets dropped the finale in this series with the Arizona Diamondbacks 5-4. Would start with Jose Quintana, 4 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. He also had 2 hit batters in this outing, so just not a very good outing from Jose Quintana. 84 pitches and 4 innings. Uh, and we've seen this of late with Quintana. The home run ball is killing him. And for selfish reasons, or thinking from a business perspective, outings like this are just going to drop his trade value, and you're not going to be able to get as much for him. Or if anything, perhaps we've talked about. I've talked about it. I think you've kind of just played along with me. Uh, but this is starting to become a little bit like Carlos Carrasco last year, a guy, veteran guy, uh, struggling, and every time his day comes in the rotation, you're just kind of like, all
Yeah.
right. Hopefully, he can get 5 innings today. Um, but the struggles for Katana have continued. Um, I mean, what's to make of him right now? We know we've talked about it of late. Not a high velo guy, relies on contact to get his outs, but unfortunately, the contact against him currently is hard contact.
Yes. Like I said last week, Jose Quintana has always been pretty solid because he allowed it. He, uh, he didn't allow home runs, and right now he does. So that's definitely a concern for me because he is still, by the way, 2 solo shots. So again, the home runs he did allow didn't provide that much runs. So that to me it's shocking because it seems like he has runners on every time. Again, a game where he walked 3, allowed 4 hits, and had hit 2 batters in 4 innings. That's a lot of base runners. Last outing he allowed 10 hits, so in 6 innings. So that's a lot of base runners. Um, so shocking that it's again good that it's again solo shots because it could be a whole different line if he did allow them with runners on. So yeah, I do I do think that the Mets are gonna try to trade him. Obviously, he hasn't pitched well. If he pitched like last year, you get a little bit more out of him. I still don't think you get that much for a guy like Jose Quintana, but obviously more. Um, So yeah, that's not good. If the I do wonder, and I think I made a pretty good point in our chat yesterday, which you kind of ignored almost, but
Shocker.
but, but yes, if you have um, a rotation of young guys, which I obviously hope that the Mets or look forward. Let me rephrase that. Look forward to with the Mets with Scott Budo, maybe a guy like Vessel, maybe a guy like Hamill, maybe a guy like Blake Pitwell. And in between those guys, you do need innings, and I think Severino and Manaya are obviously the arms right now that will get a better return. So if the return for Jose Quintana is very light, maybe you need a guy and who makes his starts in between those young arms just to have some durability there and hope for the best, just like with Carlos Carrasco. I think with Carlos Carrasco, it was more of a, uh, you know, respecting, but I do see a bit of a reason for Quintana to stay uh, that makes it better for the young guys, actually.
Katana right now has allowed 11 home runs in 62 and two-thirds innings pitched. After last year just allowing 5 in 75 and two-thirds innings pitched. So that home run has shot up quite a bit against Jose Catana. And I get the argument you're making for having a veteran guy there, uh, eat innings, whatever. Uh, but unfortunately, right now, I wouldn't say that Quintana is eating a whole lot of innings when he's
That's
just
true.
going for. But I understand what you talked about too with the potential lack of pitching depth post July 31st if you do move Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, guys like that. So, I mean, is it possible Quintana sticks around? Yes, it's very possible, especially with the way he's pitching of late. Um, but I just think it's just disappointing because we know Quintana is not going to be a part of the future. We have a very I would be shocked if they brought him back next year. So it's almost at a point where, let's say it's August 13th, whatever, the Mets are out of it. They've traded away their big guns. Um, what other than maybe being a veteran guy, what value really does Jose Quintana bring to the team? I don't think it's a whole lot. And it's a sunk cost at that point. I don't think Quintana is helping you much. Um, so maybe it's a lot easier said than done, because it's we're not in the front office, whatever. But it's just kind of almost a waste of a roster spot at that point, in my mind. Definitely come September, I think it's, you know, definitely a
Yeah,
waste.
but if you are in September and you see that some of the young guys just pitched well, performed well, and you don't have an issue with workload because, like I mentioned, Christian Scott career high before this year was 87 and two-thirds innings in pro ball. Um, so yeah, we all want to see the younger guys, but I think we also need um, to have a fallback option. And you could say that that's Adrian Hauser. You could say that it's Joey Lucchesi. Um, there are other options out there. So if the return for Jose Quintana is well for what you can get for him decent, I would still do it because you have a guy like Joey Lucchesi, Adrian Hauser, which I doubt those guys will get traded. So um, maybe you could go that way and say, oh, we have those guys if there's a need. But we also have seen how much pitchers especially in the middle of the year, how much pitchers you need. Maybe with the young guys, it's smart to. I could let me say this. I could see it both ways. If the return is very mediocre, um, keep him around, and maybe if eventually you say DFA him in September, I mean the money is gone anyways. So you could still go without Jose Quintana um, if you feel that he's not needed anymore, not needed for innings, not needed for the young guys.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to bring up Adrian Hauser as maybe the veteran filler guy in the rotation. So I don't have to make that point anymore because you just made it. So thanks for that.
It's an interesting decision though.
Oh,
It really is. I
definitely.
think it's easy for us,
Yeah,
as fans. We mostly just say, yeah, get rid of the guy
yeah,
because he
yep.
sucks. And but it's still, if you look at it for an organizational way with how you handle young pitchers, it's a lot more interesting than I think um, it's for us as fans.
Yeah,
Let me put it that way.
yeah. Like I said, nah, it's easier said than done, especially for us. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, like the points we made about young guys and innings limits and stuff like that. So, and obviously, if you float Quintana out there, you get some offers, but they're not what you're hoping to get or anything like that. Then the odds are you're probably just going to keep them. And um, but I do think there has to come a point, at least in September. Maybe it's just like the last 2 weeks of the season, something like that, where it's at that point. You have an idea of who's going to be potentially hitting their limits, if anyone's close, whatever. If if you're going to pitch these guys for the rest of the season, I think it's just better to let the bird fly away. Let them go.
Could be. You
So,
could also make the argument that we're gonna lose some bullpen on, so maybe
yep.
you can put Quintana in the Hauser role. It's just a guy who is out there, maybe throw some innings. I know Quintana is not necessarily a good bullpen arm to have, in my opinion. I think he works better as a starter, but still you have that flexibility maybe if you need a spot starter. I think the young guys in the bullpen. Um, I think we probably lose four guys in that bullpen. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Ottavino. We already lost Jorge Lopez, obviously, but Ottavino, Diekman, and who else did I thought about? Well, I don't know who the third one was.
Well, I got the tweet you sent me. If we wanted to start to dive into this, um, so I do have to put a disclaimer there. This is from Bob Nightingale, so let's just all take this with a grain of salt. Just kind
Yes.
of like, okay, okay. But I think this is kind of a list that most fans would expect that the Mets are gonna float out there to other organizations. So this is Mets are expected to shop the following players this summer per Bob Nightingale. So like I said, just play along. Pete Alonso, JD Martinez, Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, Jose Quintana, Adam Ottavino, Jake Diekman, Reed Garrett, Jeff McNeil, Harrison Bader, Starling Marte. And we talked
Wow.
about this a little bit yesterday. I do think a lot of those guys on the list are likely to go. There are some on that list that I would definitely like to see go, but I think are probably not going to be traded, mostly due to contracts. And the Reed Garrett one was maybe a little bit of a surprise, but I think factoring his age, even though he's got control, um, if you can, especially with like the Oakland A's, Mason Miller is a guy who's been talked about if because he's got a lot of control as well. But if the A's aren't willing to move him, maybe a team that is looking for a very controllable reliever will call the Mets about Reed Garrett. I mean, who knows? I definitely have to float him out there because he's come out of nowhere. And we've seen him struggle a little bit of late, even though he did pitch the 1-2-3 inning on Sunday and struck out the side. Um, but I think you have to capitalize on this potentially. Is Reed Garrett part of your future bullpen for when you're hopefully competing for an NL East, World Series, stuff like that? Um, I have my
Maybe,
doubts, but
maybe not. Yeah,
I
I
think you
think that.
definitely have to float them out
Yeah,
there and see what you could get. But um, I mean, a lot of guys on this list, no surprise whatsoever. Um, but just kind of because you sent that to me, so I'm curious to get your reaction to when you saw this tweet come out on the list, and did anything really catch you by surprise?
no, not really, but I was happy. Honestly, we know this team. I mean, you can bring all the positives out there. I had my little rant last week, which we shared on Facebook yesterday about the core. It's time to just do it completely different. And part of I think right now you definitely gonna trade Pete Alonso, and I think Pete Alonso is definitely a nice get for a couple of teams to make a playoff push. We mentioned on the chat the Milwaukee Brewers, and you mentioned the Milwaukee Brewers as maybe a fit for Pete Alonso, maybe an arm, because they need a better first baseman and they need a better starting pitching. So I saw somebody saying that the Baltimore Orioles had some starting pitching issues. So starting pitching is a hot commodity. Severino and Manaea are both having a good year. Um, I do believe that Diekman, Ottavino, although Ottavino has struggled, um, are guys. We see what David Robertson got us back yet last year. I think a pretty nice prospect in Marco Vargas and a catcher who has done a lot of good things in Ronald Hernandez, who could both maybe not be superstars, but could be solid, you know, major league ball players at some point, very young both. So we see uh, that they get some return, so that's good. Um, so yeah, I'm actually pretty excited. I'm excited to see what we get in return. I'm excited to see maybe we get some nice young talent, but we also get some close to the major leagues type talent, which I would happy. And I'm excited to see guys like Daniel Nunez, guys like Danny Young, guys like Josh Walker, guys like maybe a guy like Eric Orsi, who's been in AAA for a couple of years, has some nice strikeout stuff, a good splitter. Uh, Maybe he could help us in the bullpen. So I'm excited to see those guys. A lot of roster spots that you have when you trade all those pieces off. So
Yeah, I think obviously Alonso's going to be the hottest commodity on that list, but I would argue that the next guy up for demand would probably be Luis Severino, just because everyone needs pitching. Obviously, he's rebounded extremely well this year, despite his rocky outing against the Diamondbacks. I think he's a little bit more valuable to teams other than a JD Martinez. Obviously, we know JD Martinez is going to be a hot commodity because people are going to want the power bat, the postseason experience. Uh, but I think Severino is probably the next best guy to net you a solid return. And you made the argument as well. The Brewers. I think you sent it over. They're like what are they, 17th in first base WAR, 21st in starting pitching WAR. You could perhaps package some of these guys to increase the return, and we know that the Mets are willing to eat money on these guys as well. So that just enhances your return.
yeah, 100%. So definitely, I think there's definitely talent coming back for these guys. Obviously, not as much as when you would put Pete Alonso on a trade market last year, but we saw it. But Javi Baez also, I don't think that teams are necessarily open doing that much for rentals anymore. But I think we still could see some good players in return. And the Mets already have some good youth in the minor league system, especially on the pitching side. So maybe we could get some, nice promising hitters, some offense, get the best player available. That's always what I said. But we see some young guys in Vientos, Alvarez, obviously the young guys in AAA. So uh, time to get a new core surrounding Lindor and Nimmo.
Yeah, no question about that. So before we get into the minor league minute here, let's just talk about these young bullpen arms, or maybe the some guys maybe more young in major league experience than anything, because we know Danny Young's a little, he's on the older 20s side, so but very young when it comes to major league experience. But Dednell Nunez uh, pitched very well for the Mets when in his opportunities. Danny Young has been very good in his opportunities as well. Josh Walker has shown stuff. Obviously, he got beat around a little bit on Saturday. Kind of had to take one for the team there. Unfortunately, that got him a demotion to Syracuse, but we kind of knew that was probably coming with him pitching 2 1/3 on Saturday. But we've seen flashes from these young bullpen arms, and I'm just wondering at this point, is there any chance these guys are going to be getting some high leverage situations, perhaps because we've seen guys like Reed Garrett struggle a little bit trying to close out games. Ottavino had his struggles against the Dodgers. Obviously, Diekman had the struggles yesterday against the Diamondbacks. I'm just wondering if is there any chance even before these guys are likely traded, is it possible that in the eighth inning in the 1 run game we get to see Deadnail Nunez come in and face some tough hitters? What are your thoughts on that potentially happening pre July 31st?
I think it's going to be after July 31st because I think it's also smart to show other teams what your trade, uh, what your guys that you want to trade are doing. So obviously, Ottavino and Reed Garrett, um, they will get some more attention if they can get saves. And Reed Garrett did get a couple of saves, although he also had some meltdowns. But I think that's, him striking out the side yesterday with a 1-1 lead. I think those things are catching other teams' eyes. Maybe even the Diamondbacks who have seen that and think, oh, wow, Ottavino looked better, by the way, yesterday. Another arm that looked better yesterday. So they had their stretches, and hopefully for their trade value, they will rebound and will keep it going. But I guess you see, maybe Daniel Nunez be the closer after the 31st, depending on who you get in return, obviously. But um, and those guys getting some more legitimate opportunities. Another guy who was, I think, Drew Smith. I know you would hate me saying this, but he's in his final year of, of arbitration, right? So to me, that's probably another guy, if he shows he's healthy, that you can swap. Or you say Drew Smith is our future closer. With Edwin Diaz comes back, obviously he will be the closer, so it also depends on that. But um, maybe you say Drew Smith is a young guy we are going to try to keep. That's also a possibility. But with a year, with 1 year left, you might see him go. Poor Andrew.
Well, I just got this man crush on Drew Smith. I also got a man crush on David Peterson and guys. I got a lot of man crushes on this team. Nimmo is obviously the big one. But yeah, no, I could totally see Drew Smith if he comes back from this IL stint, pitches well. He's a free agent after the year, so that's another possible arm that could potentially get shipped out for the New York Mets. And when like we talked about these guys getting shipped out, it creates opportunities for guys within the system maybe to get a shot at the big league level. And there's some guys that have been performing very well in the minor leagues, so I think that's a good transition to Corne's minor league 6 minute.
Yeah, perfect transition, Andrew. Kudos to you. Florida Complex League. Jeremy Rodriguez, 4 for 10 in this 4 days with his second home run of the year, hitting 360 with a 982 OPS. A guy we got for Tommy Pham last year. We can all mention it. These guys you can find in trade deadline trades. So um, definitely excited to see what we get in return this year. A.G. Ewing, a homer again, his third straight day with a home run, followed with a double, two walk day on Friday. His OPS stands at 1008 with 5 home runs and just 61 at bats, so he's showing the power. Simon Wong went 4 for 4 with his third home run of the year on Friday. And the Florida Complex League Mets struck out 17 on Friday. Dominican Omar Victorino struck out 7 over 4. And Mexican Irvin Costa struck out 9. Costa is an intriguing guy, signed for just 10K and was good for the Dominican Summer League Mets. 6 innings pitched, 13 Ks for the Florida Complex League Mets. So far with just 2 walks. Tall and lanky guy with a good curve, so definitely a name to keep an eye on for Mets fans. that is showing himself stateside right now. St. Lucie, we haven't heard about Jack Wenniger for a while, so it's good to mention him again because he struggled a bit after his hot start. He went 7 innings, allowing just 3 runs, earned on 4 hits and no walks, which is always good, and struck out 12. ERA is still a bit inflated, but a 1.04 whip and 60 strikeouts in 44 and a third innings. Promising an underrated arm that I like. That's on my radar. Boston Barrow. It's his first pro home run and added a 3-hit day the day after. Ronald Hernandez is keeping his hot stretch going. Homered on Thursday, his second of the year. He hit 365, 426, 482 in May, which is obviously a great month. Jeffrey Rosa hit his third home run of the year, another young player coming out of the Dominican who is doing well. Colin Houck, has been hard on him over the first 2 months, but he's actually been in a good, nice hot stretch right now. Hit his first pro home run of the year, had a tremendous week. Since May 17, he has gone 16 for 48 with 10 RBIs, so he's starting to pick it up, which is tremendous news for the Mets. Lefty Zach Thornton with a strong 6 scoreless innings. He allowed just 4 hits, 1 walk by striking out 4, lowered his ERA to 3.93. And Jorge De Leon allowed just 1 hit and 1 walk while striking out 5 in a relief of Thornton, both combined for the shutout as De Leon pitched 3 scoreless innings. Moving on to Brooklyn, Jawilmy Ramirez, who I mentioned last episode, pitching well again, allowed just 1 run over 5. He did allow 7 hits and a walk, and struck out just 1. Still, back-to-back solid outings for Jawilmy. Jeffrey De Los Santos hit his second home run of the year. 20-year-old from the Dominican has struggled in Brooklyn with a 564 OPS. He did have a nice 2 for 4 day on Thursday with a double and a home run. Mateo Gil went 3 for 5 with 2 doubles, 2 RBIs on Friday and homered on Sunday. 23-year-old has struggled in his minor league career, so good to see him having a good weekend. Douglas Ariana and Jonah Tong both had probably their first real bad outings of the year. Ariana allowed 3 runs, 2 earned over 2 and a third, and Tong allowed 5 runs, getting just 1 out. So Jonathan, a little bit of an iffy start. Hopefully he will bounce back in his next one. Kate Morris, who has been tremendous since his promotion from St. Lucie, with another scoreless outing going 4 and a third innings, allowing just 2 hits, 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts. He now has a 1.17 ERA in Brooklyn. And Wilfredo Lara and Stanley Consuegra homered on Sunday. They are both picking it up with the bat after a sluggish start of the year, so that's good to see from them. Francisco Alvarez is doing a rehab assignment, hit a 3-run home run in Binghamton. I mentioned please be back for the London series, Francisco Alvarez, because the probable pitchers aren't that exciting, so hopefully I will see Francisco Alvarez in the lineup there. Another guy who started good and had a iffy outing is Joander Suarez, back-to-back bad outings. He allowed 5 over 4 and a third. But as you saw in the ballpark yesterday, because Andrew was at the ballpark yesterday, they did mention on the scoreboard for the Mets minor league report on the scoreboard that he struck out 10. So that was the good part. They didn't mention that he also allowed 5 runs. So you get it all here, not on the Mets scoreboard. Just listen to the Queen's Connection podcast and you are all up to date. Nolan McLean hit his first home run in Double-A against former big leaguer Ty Tice. So that's good to see. Justin Jarvis was outstanding for the second time in a row. He allowed just 1 hit with no walks over 6 scoreless innings. Jarvis struck out 5 over his career. He's been good in Double-A, but hasn't found consistent success in AAA, so he's back in Double-A and pitching well. So hopefully after this stint, he might adjust well to AAA. Ryan Clifford homered yesterday, second home run of his Double-A stint so far. Hitting for some more power in Binghamton, but the average has been down. Good to see the power because that was lacking in Brooklyn early on. And Brandon Sprout Sproat does it again. 7 scoreless innings, allowed just 1 hit and 1 walk. The walks have been down for Brandon. Struck out 10 as well, 1.38 ERA, and he pitched 26 innings in his 4 starts. So he's getting the job done in Binghamton. Syracuse, we're almost there, Andrew. Well, one more team. Luke Ritter and not Ryland Bannon homered again on Thursday and on Sunday, his 10th and 11th of the year. So I would say that the Corne versus Andrew battle right now is moving Corne's way, as it usually is. People I know, mostly it's Corne knowing more than Andrew, but hey, it's another example of me being right. Solid start for Dominic Hamill with 5 scoreless innings of 2 1 ball. It's funny that I can say that against you and you don't have the time to respond because it's Corne's minor league minutes. So that's perfect time to back you a little bit. Max Krennic has been money since being a reliever. Another 2 scoreless innings with 4 strikeouts. Allowed just 1 run over his last 9 1/3 innings. Struck out 10 in that span. The Mets got Pablo Reyes, who the Mets sneaky claimed from the Red Sox and cleared waivers without much attention. Made his organizational debut this weekend. He homered and went 4 for 9 with 2 walks. So interesting middle infield possibility maybe for later in this year. Brad Beatty went 2 for 5 with 2 home runs after being sent down. And Joey Lucchesi pitched 5 scoreless innings on Sunday to get the win. He's been struggling since his MLB outing where he got ruptured. Good to see him back on track. And Brad Beatty, that's the final thing. I know I mentioned it before, but keep lifting, buddy. Keep hitting the ball in the air, and you will be all good.
Are you done? Done
I'm
making
done.
fun of me? No, you're not.
No,
No.
no,
You see,
I've never done in front of you.
you see the one issue I might have had with this whole thing is when you before you started Syracuse, you're like, "We're almost done, Andrew. Don't worry, one more team." You make it sound like I don't care about the minor leagues, which obviously I do care about the minor leagues. That's
You
why
do
we
care.
devote a portion of the show to it, you know. So I don't do it just for you because I do it because I care. I want to know. Um, but yeah, once again, you try to make me sound like an idiot that you know more than me
No,
and
no,
all
no.
that, blah blah blah.
I just understand that listening to me for 6 minutes is annoying. So it's not that you don't like minor leagues because we have good discussion about minor league players. Mostly I'm right, but oh well. But just just some nice banter between us, and it can happen on the podcast. It has to be fun. We have to have some banter.
It's banter. I don't know if it's nice banter for me anyway, but that's just
Well,
that's just my
you can
opinion.
you can do banter back.
I gave you some
Uh,
good banter before the show. It's just things we can't say, you know.
that's true.
You see, I'm more the R-rated banter where you can bring it back
Yeah.
to like PG-13 and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
have more of a hard time doing that.
So now, so now you're gonna be on the air. You're gonna be like, boo, boo, boo. You're too well. You gave me a hard time before.
Right, right.
Exactly.
Well, it's been a hard time this year for the New York Mets. They're 24 and 35 right now, 5 back in the wild card race, 16 and a half in the National League East. And things are just this month of June is just going to be extremely tough for them. They got the Nationals tonight, but then obviously the Phillies in London, Marlins, Padres, Rangers, Cubs, Yankees, Astros. It's a tough, tough month of June for the New York Mets with a lot of off days in here, I should mention. So it'll be interesting to see how they manipulate the pitchers and whatnot in this month. But like I said, they're in DC tonight to take on the Nationals for the first time this year. Had to take till June 3rd to play the Washington Nationals because well, they got to play the awesome Chicago White Sox. That's going to be a thrilling series later in the year. I'm so glad that we have less games than against National League East opponents, so the Mets can play the White Sox. Will be so. It took till June 3rd to play the Washington Nationals for a 3-game series in DC. Tyler McGill gets the ball tonight, going up against Mackenzie Gore. Tuesday night, it is going to be David Peterson making his second start against former Met Trevor Williams. And then the finale on Wednesday, some veterans going Luis Severino against Patrick Corbin. So we'll pick our players of the series now. Obviously, I did the pitcher last week. He did a hitter. So we'll flip flop for this week. I get the hitter, you get the pitcher. And just because I'm a gentleman, I'll let you go first because I'm going to be the higher man after you were just harassing me the whole time.
No, sure, Andrew, sure. Um, let's say I think it's a tough one because I think all three of them will probably have a solid start. But I will go with David Peterson also because the Nationals are a team that runs a lot, and I think David Peterson keeps the runners closer the best. He has a good pickup move. So David Peterson gonna be get the best start, uh, I think.
I'm going to ride a hot hand here with JD Martinez. A lot of extra base hits lately. Just was mashing the ball in that D-back series. Two lefties on the mound in this series with Mackenzie Gore, who was a very good pitcher. And obviously, we know Patrick Corbin has really struggled after the first year, that big deal. So two lefties in this series. I like JD Martinez the way he swinged the bat. So let's go with JD to carry that over into this series in our nation's capital. Well, my nation's capital, not your nation's capital. I should put
No,
that out there. So I think we're
it's Amsterdam.
it's Amsterdam. Well, Washington D.C., Amsterdam. There's a lot of similarities there with maybe some interesting people, should say the least. I'll put it there. I'm going to leave it there.
All right,
I'll explain to you what I'm talking about after. How about that?
sure.
uh, well, so you're off to London on Thursday.
Yes,
So
yeah,
this is what's going to happen, as we'll let people know. We're going to take basically the week off, I guess, because you're going to be traveling, you're going to be doing stuff in London. So basically, what we're going to do is just have to produce a lot of content on the social media pages. So make sure to go follow us there: Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. YouTube as well. Post the clips there. So, but you're going to be enjoying life in London and those two ball games in London. So
yes,
we're just going to take the week off. We'll come back. We'll talk to you probably on Tuesday before
yeah.
the start of the series with the Miami Marlins when the Mets are returning back to the United States and you're returning back to the Netherlands. So I think that's going to be the plan. So just stay tuned for all of that. So, sir, thanks for joining us uh, and enjoy your trip, your 4 hour train ride under the water to London. Um, I'm still amazed by how they build tunnels that long and underwater, but that's something we don't need to discuss on here. So, thanks for joining us.
Well,
Enjoy.
you're gonna try a new podcast with trains and nerds.
Right. Exactly. That's what we're going to do. Going to do a train podcast. All right, sir. Thanks for joining as always and enjoy your trip. Have fun. And I'm sure you're going to have a blast.
I hope so.
Well, I mean,
I hope for at least one win, and obviously, I mean, it will be fun either way. Seeing the match live again. So yeah, definitely look forward to seeing the match there. But I I do hope that I get back to the Netherlands with at least one win.
I think a lot of Mets fans would hope for the same thing right now. Just any win is a good win for the New York
Yes.
Mets. So, all right, everyone, thanks for listening. This has been the Queen's Connection, a production of Patent Sports Creative. Like I already mentioned, go follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter. Just search the Queen's Connection, pop right up. Also, check out the YouTube page, post the full episodes there, clips as well. So, thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy the 3-game series against the Washington Nationals and the London series against the Philadelphia Phillies.